Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel Tour update. And as the developments here in the region do not cease for a moment, with shifting sands progressing as usual, today we mark, of course, day 489 since the Islamist Hamas launched its onslaught on October 7th of 23 on southern Israel, with still many hostages in Hamas captivity. Nevertheless, Trump's plan that was unveiled earlier this week is causing and steering some rhetoric out of multiple nations. And before we deliberate the ins and outs of everything, I'd like to turn to Madrid, Spain, where we're joined by Dr. Rafael Barraji, formerly Spain's national security advisor and one of the top experts when we're talking about the Middle East at large and Israel in particular. It's great to see you, Rafael. I'd like to immediately ask you, is President Trump's plan a visible plan at that?
Well, I don't care really if it's feasible or not. I think just the fact that he has presented such a disruptive idea is good enough for the rest of the world to reposition themselves. No? The European Union has reacted violently against what they consider an illegal proposal, which is not actually, and that's good. I think when everyone is against the idea of Trump, it's because it has some merits by itself. No? I think the importance of this is to change the narrative, to expose the hypocrisy of many that has been talking, for instance, about poor Palestinian refugees in Gaza. A refugee, by definition, has no roots in the land where it is, and now they are the owner of the land. No? You know, all these kinds of contradictions that the world has been believing blindly are now exposed, and that's thank you to the President Trump innovative approach. Bad ideas are always like a rocket star; they never die. But I think it's time to tell the truth. No, that ideas have a sell-by time, and the idea that the Palestinian state is composed by the West Bank and Gaza is over. It's over in the way those two territories are now controlled by the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. That has to change. If the world is really against the oppression of Hamas, of the poor Palestinians, I mean, accepting the idea that Palestinians must or should freely to live temporarily or forever, depending on the will, to some other places is good enough, and it's something to try. Again, President Trump is a good negotiator. He always brings the maximum idea and the goals in the very beginning, but I think it's a good starting point to talk to other regional and world powers to seriously think about the future of Gaza after Hamas. Up to now, the whole world has been demanding Jerusalem to have a plan, which is impossible. I think without international community engagement, there cannot be any plan in Gaza for any positive future for both Gazans, Palestinians, and Israelis. So I think the proposal of Trump has the merit to shake the whole discussion, change the focus, change the narrative, and let's say what can bring. If feasible or not, is not the point today yet.
Indeed. Well, also joining us for the discussion is, of course, our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, a disruptive plan, for sure. Some may say that it's not aligned with international law. Others would say utilize terms like ethnic cleansing or forced displacement, even though I went down those two terms. Legally, they're not there, to say the least. Nevertheless, the anti-American and anti-Israeli camp is usually very keen on utilizing the most dramatic terms possible, and to say that everything that they say is in convergence with international law. But nonetheless, I'd like to hear your take on the current state of play from Israel's perspective. Is Israel taking Trump's plans seriously? We hear something from the defense minister, from the foreign minister. What's going on with that?
So the term plan may be putting too much into Trump's idea. It had very little planning ahead of the unveiling of the idea. And one piece of evidence for that is that if you go to the White House website in search of the exact meaning of President Trump's statements, you don't find it there. You find several very elaborate statements on other topics, some of them national security, foreign policy, domestic, even sports, protecting women in sports from transgender participation. But you find nothing about the Gaza proposal because it was only hatched a short time before the president spoke about it. So one should consider it the germ of an idea. And if you consider it in that light, it, of course, needs the approval of those who are supposed to leave Gaza, the Gazans, none of whom up to now, whether they can speak out of their own volition or are under threat, that if they show their intention to leave, they will be killed by Hamas is another matter. None of the receiving country under this idea is yet to approve of it. There are several legal points in addition to the general international law. For instance, what is going to happen on the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, the Philadelphia corridor? Will Israel be asked to contribute and get some of those Palestinians in Gaza? What rights are they going to have? No taxation without representation, right? However, Defense Minister Israel Katz has already stated that he has directed the Israel Defense Forces to start planning for the transshipment of Gazans via the air, via the sea, and through land crossing points. Of course, this is very preliminary. Nobody has yet approached Israel formally to take part in it. And what we have as the latest iteration of the Trump idea is what he, I can't say tweeted because it's on his own social media, Truth Social, but what he stated was that at the conclusion of the fighting, it's not really clear what that means, but when the war ends, Israel will give over Gaza to the United States and no American troops would be needed. This is a slight change from the original language during the press conference. So here we are right now, and one problem is that the issue of the hostages has been set aside. Here we are on a Thursday, day after tomorrow, 3 more, at least, hostages should be returned, but we hear nothing about it, neither about the list of names, nor about the logistics involved. So it's a matter of concern.
Well, with regard to the hostages, there was an announcement earlier today about the delegation set to travel to Qatar, Doha, for the negotiations vis-a-vis the second stage of the deal. So there are discussions, of course. The negotiations started upon the arrival of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington when he met with Steve Witkoff and White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. If I can point out two things. One, with regard to the website not having something related to it, today I went through the website of the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, to find the transcript and the video of the meeting between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Pete Hegseth. While they did have the transcript, they didn't have the video, which they usually do. It doesn't mean that it's not there, but of course they didn't upload it there yet. Secondly, when we're talking about the plan itself, I still have the video and all of the materials of the articulated plan as put forth by President Trump from 7th of March 2024, as was articulated by Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, who formerly served as his senior advisor with regard to the Middle East. He goes down all the various steps, and one of the points that he did mention that didn't necessarily have to do with the Egyptians or the Jordanians was that one of the options would be the Negev desert to establish their certain territory in order to put them aside and then prepare that. But we won't go into all the details since we will have to articulate all of that for the remainder of the show. So we'll stop there. And when we're talking about the third parties, of course, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan is very concerned about its own survival, and adding members of the Muslim Brotherhood that just won the largest share of parliament in history of that organization of radicals is alarming the monarchy itself. And we're talking about Egypt, a country with hundreds of thousands of members of the Muslim Brotherhood currently in jails, incarcerated for affiliation. So bringing 1.8 million people from the Gaza Strip, with a vast majority of them members of the Muslim Brotherhood, I mean, Egypt could practically just throw them into jail upon arrival. So that's also something to consider. But I'd like to turn now to the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense, namely Brigadier General in Reserve, Doron Gavish. It's good to see you, General. I'd like to immediately ask you to also voice your perspective to the current state of play vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip. Where are we when we're talking about this terror-ridden territory?
Well, Jonathan, I would like to echo what was said by Amir. I think that he is right on this, that it is not a plan yet. We can't call it a plan. There is an idea. And now, once the idea is in the air, we should all have to see how do we make it a plan. So it will take some time to be to the point that we do have a plan. Of course, from a military point of view, plan must be very articulate. You have to know exactly who is doing, what is doing, when is doing, and how is doing it. So there is a long way to go there. But of course, we have to wait and see what the way that this idea would be shaped, how all our region is going to react to it. Of course, if we are looking from the Israeli interest, and while we're talking about the Gaza Strip, we have to talk about the goals of this war. You know, from a state point of view and from a military point of view, we talked about three main goals of this war. The first goal was to fight the Hamas and to make sure that we are basically destroying its military capabilities and making sure that the Hamas is not coming back to be the ruler of the Gaza Strip. The second one was to bring back all our hostages. And the third one is to make sure that the Gaza Strip won't be for the future an area that is posing a threat to the Israelis, mainly in the south part of Israel. So when we are looking on the idea that was posed by President Trump, and of course we heard also our Prime Minister Netanyahu point of view, we could say that it is aligned with the three goals of the war from the Israeli perspective.
Thank you, General Kavish. I will point out two things about whether or not it's already a plan or not. I won't go into more than that, but Steve Witkoff, the presidential envoy to the Middle East, met with a whole list of senators just in the last 24 hours to brief them on the plan. which explicitly stated the plan with all the different stages of that specific plan. It was conveyed to Prime Minister Netanyahu less than 72 hours ago, or 48 hours ago for that matter. So the plan exists. It was not yet relayed to the different chains in command, and therefore we need to wait and see what it actually entails. But the public reference that we have to it, again, going back to 2024, was the remarks made by the son-in-law of President Trump, namely Jared Kushner. Now, I'd like to turn to you, Dr. Barrahi, and ask you also about another angle that was discussed during Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting with President Trump, and that is the Iranian aspect of things. Of course, President Trump has indicated, on the one hand, that he is serious about his intentions. So he did sign in the executive order for the maximum pressure campaign to be reinvigorated on the one hand. On the other hand, he did signal his hopes for a diplomatic resolution to Iran's nuclear program, its aspirations to attain nuclear weapons. And the Iranians, from their side, said that they are willing to go the extra mile to accommodate the president's wishes. What does that actually mean? I'm not certain. But nonetheless, within that context, the Iranians have also stated quite fervently that the war against Israel is not over, and the ceasefire currently, both in Gaza as well as in Lebanon, is merely a period of rebuilding for their proxies, and they intend to go back to the battlefield.
Yes, indeed. I think President Trump has made clear that he's not allowing Iran, he will not allow Iran to become a nuclear power. But he said, as in the past, that he prefers a diplomatic solution to a military one. That's for sure. So he's putting back the maximum pressure strategy. He will announce probably, and he will talk to the allies and in Europe about, and in the United Nations about bringing back the snapback sanctions against Iran, squeezing the oil revenues and exports from Iran to the world, including China and Russia, and we'll see. But the main thing is he has not excluded any option. So as we used to say, all options are on the table. So if the diplomatic channel doesn't work, I'm inclined personally to believe that it won't work in the long term, that there is the military option, whether directly by the United States or helping Israel to accomplish the national goals of Israel for their own security. So it's an open question, but the good thing is that they are putting pressure, so maybe to see if the Ayatollahs can go back to, for the first time in their history, to a faithful negotiations. And if not, well, we have to wait. We have to wait. He knows very well that the Iranians have been enriching at a higher speed in the last months the uranium that may go into a nuclear weapon. So the time span is limited, but still there are some months to play around. And so we'll see. And I think it's important for him to understand that, okay, he has an incredible idea about Gaza, but the main problem in the region is not Gaza, it's Iran. So let's not forget that.
Absolutely. Well, there's another emerging problem, of course, and that's called Al-Qaeda, namely Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in its current form. Abu Muhammad al-Julani visited Ankara yesterday, met with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, during the course of which they deliberated a security pact between the two countries, hoping to see the development of 2 Turkish bases in Syria, central Syria to be exact. They do consider also all kind of maritime agreements, even with the French. It's something that they've been deliberating as of late. But Mr. Oren, when we're looking specifically on the Syria file, are we to be concerned by the latest push by Turkey to increase its military involvement? Of course, the key focus of those discussions in Ankara were about how to attack the Kurds, the YPG and the PKK, to be exact.
Yes, there were also some reports of a secret channel of negotiations between the Turkish government and the PKK. Who knows? They are bitter enemies, but maybe they can reach some accommodation. But to your question, of course, Israel should be concerned because it is not Turkey, the nation, which is, of course, well respected, quite a force in the region as well as in NATO. It's the Erdogan government, which is openly hostile towards Israel. We all remember their ties with Hamas, including the Marmara incident 15 years ago. Nothing good can come from friction between Turkey and Israel in Syria. The Syrians will suffer, that's for sure. Will Israel and or Turkey benefit? That's very doubtful. And some sort of an arrangement should be reached. Hopefully, Mossad and MIT on either side can set up or sustain some back channel in order to solve the problems before they arise.
Just for the sake of our viewers, MIT, the Turkish intelligence agency headed by Ibrahim Kalin, formerly the secretary of the presidential palace under President Erdogan, and the current foreign minister, of course, Hakan Fidan, used to serve prior to his post as the top diplomat of Ankara as the head of MIT. So they're all very much involved on the intelligence file when dealing with those kind of issues, diplomacy behind the scenes, track two and such. But General Gavish, the fact of the matter is we have a very interesting analogy, a concerning analogy, in which there is a very significant dispute between Greece and Turkey, where you see for decades now both air forces frustrating each other in various areas of dispute, something that the Europeans, NATO, due to the fact that both are NATO allies, but also the United States had to contend with for a very long time. Is that now a reality that Israel may also face over Syrian skies and potentially, let's put it this way, Israel is less restrained than Greece when we're talking about being able to confront seeming threats?
Well, of course, this is a concern, Jonathan. I don't think that anyone would like to see something like this between Israel and Turkey, although we understand we do have some challenges in our relations, let's put it this way. But when it comes to military, this is a completely different story. From the Israeli point of view, and I'm always pointing out the Israeli interest. The Israeli interest in Syria is number one, to make sure that the Hezbollah is not being rearmed through Syria by his leaders, let's put it this way, in Iran or others. So this should be the number one, I would say, concern from the Israeli point of view, to make sure that Israel could continuously deal with this challenge, although it is on Syrian land, on some other places. We said it again and again, this is a red line for us. And we said it also that as a lesson learned from the last war, Israel is looking on our enemy's capabilities and not only intentions. So when we see around us capabilities that might danger Israel, we understand that we would have to react for them. So I think this is one of the main concerns, is to make sure that Israel have this free of flying, free of making whatever is necessary in order to defend Israel from the one side, and to make sure that Hezbollah is not being rearmed by anyone.
Thank you, General Gavish. Dr. Bardahi, I'm very keen to hear what you have to say about this. Go ahead.
Well, I think, look, sincerely, with some perspective, and despite all the concerns about Turkey injecting itself in Syria, Turkey is not a superpower as Russia is or was. And I would prefer to have Turkey around in the north of Syria than having the Russians in the middle supporting the regime. No? But having said that, I think Turkey has many problems in expanding in the area. No? It's not an Arab country. He will find the opposition of many Arab nations around in the Gulf and in North Africa, as Erdogan experienced in North Africa, in Libya, Algeria, and Morocco. No? So it's not a giant, though I understand that there may be some problems with Israel if Turkey reach an understanding or an agreement or inject itself in the new government in Syria whenever there is a new effective government working there. No? But again, putting on the perspective, I'd say I'm much more happy with the situation today than it was 3 months ago. No?
Absolutely. Well, it is important to highlight that the situation in Damascus is still very fluid. The situation across Syria is fluid. HTS, despite having the full backing both of Turkey and Qatar, is not cannot be regarded as the new regime of Syria. It does not control even a third of Syria at this point. So, so long as it's continuing down the path of its jihadist and Islamist aspirations, whatever it might claim, and despite rhetoric in its support of green pastures for the future coming out of Europe and the United States in the previous administration, I don't see this current regime surviving much longer. But of course, time will tell how those things evolve. And with that, I'd like to immediately thank Dr. Bardahi, General Gavish, and Mr. Owen for all of your insights, and like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
My name is Doron Gavish, and my background, 30 years of serving in the Israeli Air Force. My last job, I was the commander of the Israeli Air and Missile Defense during the introduction of the Iron Dome to the defense of Israel. All of this allows me really to be part of the team here in TV7. It is super important to have such a platform. We talk about the global situation, we talk about Israel and those different angles which are relevant to the discussion.
The Middle East, home to the cradle of civilization, retains a reputation from time immemorial as one of the most complex, conflict-ridden regions of the world. A cluster of nations, religions, powers, and influences, Mideast intricacies pose conundrums to even the most astute individuals. Bombarded daily, indeed every minute, by a barrage of information, some accurate, yet most of it less so, TV7 Israel invites you to watch and hear some of the most knowledgeable experts, most of whom partook in creating policies shaping this region today. Join us for Jerusalem Studio every Tuesdays and Fridays for content that truly matters.